Chapter 599 to 602, the base of Akatsuki organization. After receiving the 2 scrolls from his clones, who brought them back from the Land of Fire, Zetsu passed them to Obito and said, "These 2 scrolls were given by the 2 informants that you recently developed in the Konoha village." While taking the 2 scrolls from Zetsu's hand, Obito asked casually, "How did it go? Did either of them try to be oversmart?" Obito wasn't too worried about Hyuga Kuroto, and felt that Kuroto was in his control, but in regards to Uchiha Itachi, Obito couldn't be so sure because for some reason that Obito is unable to figure out, Uchiha Itachi was too calm while interacting with him. Zetsu replied with a smile, "It went quite well, actually. Sometime after I placed the marks, both of them rushed to those locations, and both of them were alone without any suspicious people behind them. Maybe they are really worried about the 2 kids." Obito nodded with a thoughtful expression, then unfolded the 2 scrolls and started to read the information written in them. As he read the information recorded in the scroll sent by Hyuga Kuroto, Obito's face became extremely serious. Zetsu hurriedly questioned, "What is written inside it?" Obito replied in a deep tone of voice, "It is exactly as we suspected. According to what Hyuga Kuroto has written in this scroll, Amatsukami and Konoha are indeed suspected to have formally signed several agreements not long ago. Although the content of the agreements are unknown even to Anbu, as Sandaime Hokage is the only one aware of the exact content, it can still be assumed that their cooperation is now formal, because in the past month, the female Homusubi has appeared in Konoha several times, and each time she appears, she walks inside the village through the main gate under the escort of Konoha's Anbu, and then personally meet up with the Sandaime Hokage." Zetsu raised his eyebrow in surprise. Unexpectedly, the cooperative relationship between Amatsukami and Konoha has already reached this point. It seems we have to be more cautious in our future actions against Konoha. Obito nodded lightly and added, "Yes. Other than capturing the Jinchuriki of Kyubi, we shouldn't try to do anything else to Konoha. I need to warn Nagato too. Otherwise, there is no telling what would happen if we were to encounter Yama. If it was in the past, even when Namikaze Minato was alive, Obito was never afraid of sneaking inside Konoha. In fact, not only was he not afraid, he always treated Konoha village as his personal back garden. He would sneak inside Konoha whenever he wanted, and then leave whenever he wanted. But after receiving this information from Hyuga Kuroto, Obito wouldn't dare to do so anymore, because if female Homusubi can openly come and go in Konoha, then the possibility of Yama, as well as other members of Amatsukami appearing in Konoha, is also very high, and he wouldn't want to get himself surrounded by more than one member of Amatsukami at the same time. In fact, not only for him, but even for other members of the Akatsuki organization, Konoha village will be made a forbidden region, because unlike him, the others cannot use space-time jutsu or izanagi to escape, and Obito doesn't want to imagine the consequences of them running into Amatsukami. Zetsu nodded and asked again, "Did your informant write any specific details of Konoha and Amatsukami's cooperation? Or maybe any other detail of Amatsukami that we can use to our benefit?" Obito shook his head. Apparently, Homusubi only talked with the Sandaime Hokage and didn't engage in any sort of conversation with anyone else. As such, only Sarutobi Hiruzen is aware of the specific details of their cooperation. The others, including the Anbu, are not even qualified to know those specific details. At this time, Black Zetsu asked with a doubtful expression, "Do you really think he is speaking the truth? What if he is lying and wants us to stay away from Konoha? Or what if he does know the exact contents of the deal between Amatsukami and Konoha, but he is not telling us?" Obito narrowed his eyes and asked, "What are you trying to say?" Black Zetsu replied, "I am just asking whether the information he has given is really credible or not." Obito became silenced. Then he showed the last part of the scroll to Black Zetsu and said, "See this part? He seems to be quite impatient in regards to the safety of his disciple. Although this too could be an act, still, the fact that we have his disciple as hostage cannot be denied. What's more," he also asked, "when can I provide him the way to remove the cage bird curse seal from his forehead? Since there are things that he wants from the Akatsuki, therefore, I don't think he will try to fool us. The information he has given should be true to some extent." White Zetsu nodded with a chuckle. It seems we really have caught his weaknesses. The fate of the members of the branch division of the Hyuga clan is really quite pitiful. But I don't really have the time and energy to break the cage bird cursed seal. And once our plan succeeds, I wouldn't even need to crack it. In the Genjutsu world, he will be free of the cage bird cursed seal. Then he added with a thoughtful expression, but that aside, for now, one of our doubts has been confirmed. Amatsukami is only in contact with the Hokage of Konoha. This is why none of our spies in Kumogakure, Sunagakure, or Iwagakure were able to report any intelligence about Amatsukami cooperating with the 5 great shinobi villages. Because it turns out that, rather than cooperating with the leaders of all the villages, Amatsukami is only in cooperation with the leader of Konoha village. White Zetsu nodded and said, "Since we have Hyuga Kuroto in our control, why don't you force him to directly steal information from the Sandaime Hokage? Or maybe we can try to use him to control Konoha's Hokage? Anyway, he has already betrayed the Konoha village, and with Cage Bird seal on his forehead, there is no turning back for him. As such, he shouldn't dare refuse our instructions, so we can use him to control Konoha's Hokage, and then obtain all the information about Amatsukami from Konoha's Hokage." Obito thought about it and said, "I will think about it." After that, he unfolded the second scroll brought by Zetsu, and as soon as he read the content written in it, Obito's expression under the mask became strange, and he became inexplicably silent. Zetsu was surprised at Obito's sudden silence, and knowing that the scroll was given by Uchiha Itachi, he couldn't help but ask, "What is it?" Did Uchiha Itachi give some useful information that would help us figure out the identity of the 2 Homusubi and help us deal with the 2 of them? With an inexplicable expression, Obito threw the scroll towards Zetsu and said, "Read it yourself." Zetsu unfolded the scroll with a strange expression and read the content written on it. Uchiha Obito, who was assumed to have died as a war hero in the Battle of the Kanabi Bridge, is suspected of being the male Homusubi of Amatsukami, Obito said with a sullen tone. I don't know if he wrote this intentionally or not, but he is implying that according to him, Uchiha Obito is suspected of still being alive. Ryuchi Cave Ichikishima Haim smiled, and while lovingly patting Naruto's head, she praised him. "Naruto-kun, you learned it so easily and so quickly." "Huh? Already?" Naruto had traces of serpent scales on his face, along with vertically slitted slit golden eyes and reddish-orange eyeshadow, was surprised by Ichikishima Haime's words. Ichikishima Haime clasped her hand, nodded. "Yup, you have already learned it. And I might as well add that among all the people I have taught Senjutsu as of yet, you were the fastest to learn. So you are the most genius kid I have ever seen when it comes to Senjutsu. Yosha, I managed to learn Senjutsu! Ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Naruto, who was praised by Ichikishima Haime, burst into loud laughter. While Naruto was cheering and jumping in joy, Ichikishima Haime couldn't help but think to herself, even Kuroto-sama cannot match Naruto-kun's talent when it comes to Senjutsu. It's really surprising. It is as if this kid was born to wield natural energy, and Ichikishima Haime was indeed right. As the descendant of the Uzumaki clan, Naruto's basic physique is very strong. Moreover, he is also the reincarnation of Asura and has been housing Kyuubi inside him from the time of his birth, so his compatibility with natural energy is very high, and because his understanding of chakra itself is not that good at this point in time, so when introduced to the concept of Naruto energy, Naruto was able to sense it with much ease. Additionally, Naruto's thoughts are very simple. He doesn't any ideological burdens and messy thoughts because of his young mind, so his compatibility with natural energy was also better. This is completely different from the canon. In the canon, when Naruto went to Mount Myoboku, there were several reasons, but the main reason was that he wanted to avenge Jiraiya, and for that, he needed strength. Although his reasons were completely legitimate and right from a certain perspective, and motivated him to learn Senjutsu, these thoughts were selfish in a way and were also a source of ideological burdens on his mind. At the same time, Naruto was also made aware of what would happen should he fail to learn Senjutsu, so he was also psychologically pressured. But here at this moment, Naruto's mind has no such ideological or psychological burdens are on. Heck, He isn't even aware of what senjutsu is. What sort of power will it give him? How strong will it make him? Or what would be the consequences of failure? That's why his progress was so fast that it even surprised Ichikishima Haim. It must be known that Ichikishima Haim has trained countless practitioners over the course of the past few centuries, and among all of them, Naruto has made the fastest progress. Seeing the changes in Naruto's physical appearance, and also the appearance of horns on his head, Ichikishima said, "Okay, your state is stable. Now let's test the results." "All right. What should I do?" Naruto asked curiously. Ichikishima Haime pointed at the rock wall in the distance and said, "Try to punch that rock wall with all you might." Naruto looked strangely at Ichikishima Haime, but seeing that she was being serious, he walked towards the wall suspiciously, reached out his hand, and touched wall. Feeling that it was extremely hard, he hesitated and said, "Oni-chan, this wall is so hard. If I punch it with all my strength, my hand will be injured." He. Ichikishima Haim shook her head with a giggle, then motioned Naruto to trust her and not be afraid. Seeing Ichikishima Haim's insistence, Naruto was helpless. He shut his eyes tightly, then took a deep breath while clutching the fist of his right hand. Then with that, he punched the rock wall with all his might. Smash! The moment Naruto's fist fell on the rock wall was smashed and the cave shook. Feeling the vibration and rumbling in the cave, Naruto was taken aback and exclaimed, "What? Why is there an earthquake?" Ichikishima Haime smiled, and after coming closer to Naruto, she asked, "Naruto, is your hand injured?" When asked by Ichikishima Haime, Naruto suddenly reacted and looked at his hand with a blank expression. At the same time, he looked at the rock wall where he punched, then noticed the deep depression there along with all the cracks, and couldn't help but mutter in a daze, Did I make this whole? Did I make this whole?" muttered Naruto with a dazed expression because he never expected to see such a result. Ichikishima Haim smiled, and while patting Naruto's head, she explained, "Naruto-kun, currently you are in Senin mode. When you are in this mode, your action speed, reaction speed, physical strength, perception skills, as well as the recovery rate, everything will gain a qualitative leap, and you will be able to do things that other ordinary people cannot do. For example, breaking this rock wall with just a single punch." Naruto exclaimed in shock and surprise. "Huh? For real?" Being able to break such a hard wall with just a single punch was not something new to Naruto, as he experienced such a scenario several times. But the thing is, he has only ever done such a thing in his dreams, not in reality. But now that he actually managed to do it in reality as well, so at this moment, Naruto was very excited. Ichikishima Haime giggled, seeing Naruto's exciting aura, and continued, "But this is not the only effect of the Senin mode. I will show you what other magical things you can perform in Senin mode. Now, Naruto-kun, press your hand on the rock wall." Having strong trust in Ichikishima Haim, Naruto immediately stretched out his hands and pressed them on the rock wall. Ichikishima Haim then reached closer to Naruto's ear and whispered softly, "Now try to empty your mind and focus your thoughts. Good. You are doing well. Now think about what the rock wall looked like before you punched that big hole in it." Following Ichikishima Haim's guidance, Naruto quickly closed his eyes and tried to empty his mind. Surprisingly, it wasn't that difficult. And after that, he focused all his thoughts and tried to remember what the rock wall looked like when he touched it not long ago. Just as Naruto started to imagine that scene, the rocks that the wall was made up of suddenly moved as if it came to life. Like a liquid, it slowly and steadily crept into the cracks and hole, and in just a few moments it returned to its original appearance without any signs of hole or cracks on it. Clap, 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 clap. Ichikishima Haime clapped both her hands and prompted Naruto to open his eyes. "Naruto-kun, now look at the wall." Naruto opened his eyes and saw the wall in its original appearance. He quickly realized that the wall before him has recovered back to its original state, and all the cracks, crevices, and holes in it were completely gone, as if they never existed in the first place, making Naruto a little surprised and puzzled. How did this happen? Ichikishima Haim snorted proudly with and answered, "This is the power of the Senin mode." When he again heard the answer, Naruto was now in deep thought. He looked at his fist that was capable of smashing a big hole in the rock wall, then thought of the scenario where the wall restored itself. And after some time of thinking, he finally looked at Ichikishima Haim expectantly and asked, "Oni-chan, can I beat Sasuke with Senin mode? Who is Sasuke?" Ichikishima Haim was at a loss as she didn't know who the person named Sasuke is. Naruto realized his mistake and quickly explained, "Sasuke is my friend. Although he is very arrogant and proud, no one can deny that he is very strong and a real genius. In fact, not long ago, Sasuke even awakened his eyes. What were they called? Rinnegan? No, Sharingan. He even awakened his Sharingan not long ago. He is so strong that I can't even land a single hit on him." After hearing Naruto's explanation, Ichikishima Haim suddenly asked, "Sharingan, is this person Sasuke a member of, the Uchiha clan? And is he the same age as you?" Naruto nodded. "Yes, Sasuke is from the Uchiha clan, and he is only a few months older than me." Ichikishima Haim smiled and said, "Don't worry, Naruto-kun. You have learned to sense and absorb the natural energy present in heaven and earth. With this ability, no one among the humans who is in the same age group as you can defeat you. And this Uchiha Sasuke is no exception. But, Sasuke has awakened the Sharingan. Sharingan is the strongest. Kekkei Genkai out there." Naruto was not so confident, and he wasn't sure if he will be able to defeat Sasuke with the Sharingan, because everyone in the village keeps saying that the Uchiha clan is extremely powerful, and the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan is the strongest Kekkei Genkai. When you are in the Senin mode, let alone a single Sasuke who has awakened his Sharingan, even if there were several Sasuke each with a pair of Sharingan fighting against you, they still wouldn't be able to defeat you, said Ichikishima Haim with pride. Then she thought of something and added, "Of course, if you still don't believe me, you can always try to fight against him when you meet him next time and then see the result." Naruto considered Ichikishima Haim's words and nodded. "Yes, I won't know until I see for myself." But suddenly he thought of one problem and asked, "But Oni-chan, if I have to enter the Senin mode, I will have to sit still for several hours. How am I going to do that if I'm going to fight with Sasuke? Oni-chan, is there a quicker way to enter the Senin mode that wouldn't take so much time?" Ichikishima Haim shook her head. "I am sorry, Naruto-kun, but there is no shortcut to entering the Senin mode. And since you have just learned the Senin mode, it will take time for your body to adapt to the absorption of natural energy." Naruto sighed. "Is there no other way?" Ichikishima Haim shook her head. "I am afraid not. Only with continuous training, you will be able to slowly increase the natural energy absorption speed and decrease the amount of time it takes to enter the Senin mode. Other than this method, there is no other way." In fact, there is one thing Ichikishima Haim forgot to mention. The environment of the Ryuchi cave is quite special, because of which the concentration of natural energy at Ryuchi cave is quite high, several times compared to the environment of the Shinobi world. This is the reason why Naruto was able to enter Senin mode after just a few hours of absorbing natural energy. If it was somewhere else and not at Ryuchi cave, it would have taken much more time for him to absorb the appropriate amount of natural energy to enter the Senin mode. Konoha Village Poof. After the summoning crow disappeared, Kuroto went out. Since the next target for creating the Earth clone has been decided, so Kuroto sent several instructions to the Mizukage and the Kazekage. One of the instructions he sent them was to use their Anbu and investigate the location of Deidara, of course. It's not that Kuroto himself didn't try to find Deidara, but after searching for a while, Kuroto soon realized that Deidara is really a problematic child and continues to roam all over the Shinobi world. Finding such a child on his own caused a headache to Kuroto, and so he decided to take the help of some of his subordinates. As the most talented disciple of Sandaime Tsuchikage Onoki, Deidara was once part of Iwagakure's elite explosion corps. Highly praised for his clay sculptures, Deidara desired to reach greater heights in the pursuit of art, which resulted in him stealing one of Iwagakure's kinjutsu and thus became a rogue shinobi. Currently, the kid is only around 11 or 12 years old and is often heard for his art is an explosion tendencies. If it weren't for Sandaime Tsuchikage's reputation, and because of the fact that all the villages are distracted towards the Akatsuki organization, Deidara would have long been declared as a wanted criminal by the 5 great shinobi villages. Considering all the things that he was busy with, Kuroto obviously didn't have enough time to track down such a problematic child, so he did the next best thing and instructed his two subordinates to find the whereabouts of that kid. Anyway, while all his instructions were delivered, Kuroto, after coming out of his home and made his way towards the Anbu base. He wasn't too surprised to find the Anbu base fully crowded, as except for the members currently performing very important tasks, almost all the Anbu members were gathered at the base at this moment. As Kuroto entered the base, his subordinates, Kurenai, Hayate, Yugao, and Itachi, quickly greeted him. And then the 5 members of Team Ro stood at a corner of the hall. The reason why all the Anbu have gathered here is the sudden political development. Just this morning, Shimura Danzo, who was removed from his position a few months ago by Sandaime Hokage, officially announced his distrust and dissatisfaction towards Sarutobi Hiruzen's capabilities as Konoha's Hokage because of his repeated failure of protecting the village from the Akatsuki organization and asked for his resignation. Considering all the political drama that has been ongoing in Konoha for the past few months, this move of Danzo wasn't so unexpected. And because Hokage is involved, so naturally, all the Anbu have gathered here in order to follow any orders they will be instructed with to deal with the situation in case Danzo tried to use force or initiated a coup d'etat. However, it was exactly as Kuroto had expected. Danzo did not intend to use force to take power, and Sandaime too did not intend to use force to resolve this situation, as that would have caused a tense atmosphere in the village and once again affect Konoha's stability. So, although Anbu members were assembled for the what-if and by-chance scenario, the atmosphere was not too heavy, and everyone was discussing the sudden turn of events. It didn't take long before other acquaintances such as Kakashi, Shisui, and Guy also showed up at the base. Although Guy has left the Anbu and is currently a regular shinobi, being a former Anbu shinobi, he was called here nonetheless. After greeting each of his acquaintances, Kakashi, with droopy eyes and a tired expression, yawned in sleepiness. Seeing Kakashi's state, especially the heavy, dark circles under his eyes, Kuroto asked, "Didn't sleep again?" Kakashi sighed, and while helplessly scratching the back of his head, he said, "I was training and didn't realize when the time passed by." Kuroto nodded lightly and chose to remain silent. This is Kakashi's state these days. Whenever he is not doing any mission, he is training. Kuroto even suspects that Kakashi is trying not to sleep at all, perhaps because of nightmares. Although such behavior is harmful to oneself, it is still better than getting lost on the path of life. At least now Kakashi knows what he wants to do now. Kuroto deeply observed Kakashi's physical state and noticed that although Kakashi is looking lazy and tired at first glance, in actuality his entire temperament has changed, and compared with before, the current Kakashi is surrounded by a sharp aura, as a result, giving a dangerous feeling. It shouldn't entirely be the result of his realization of Obito's identity. Is it because of practicing the Flying Thunder God technique? Thought Kuroto with a curious expression. Kuroto is not completely ignorant when it comes to the Flying Thunder God technique. In fact, he too has done some research on this jutsu, and after all his research, he has found out that training this teleportation-type jutsu poses a lot of burden on the body of the user. Although the exact burden it poses is somewhat difficult to determine, we can still assume that bearing such a burden under normal circumstances is almost impossible for almost anyone. As far as Kuroto can guess, perhaps only the burden posed on the body while training in the 8 inner gates can measure up to the burden posed on the body while training Flying Thunder God technique. This can be proven by the fact that only Raikage and Tsunade Heim were able to bear the burden of the Heavenly Transfer technique, another spatial transfer technique. Precisely why, even if someone has a high talent for spatial jutsu, he may not be able to use the Flying Thunder God technique that well, because the burden that the body of the practitioner needs to bear is very heavy, and very few are able to sustain it. Of course, this does have a lot of benefits for the practitioners of the Flying Thunder God technique, because the body has to bear the huge burden during spatial travel. So those who are able to bear this burden, their physique gets strengthened over time, and their chakra control also improves more and more. Therefore, it can be said that training Flying Thunder God technique is overall training for body strengthening and chakra control, and it is still counted among the relatively high-end training methods. because during spatial travel, every joint, muscle, and cell in the body is squeezed and has to undergo continuous wear and tear. As such, the physique is continuously strengthened. Perhaps this is the main reason why, although it has been only a few months since he started training Flying Thunder God technique, it seems that he has been reborn completely, thought Kuroto. Although it is hard to say whether the loss of Mangekyo Sharingan is a good thing or a bad thing for him, it can at least be said that without having to bear the burden of Mangekyo Sharingan, Kakashi definitely has more chakra reserves at his disposal. And if he also manages to master the Flying Thunder God technique at the same level as the Yondaime Hokage, then his strength will definitely be several times stronger compared to what it was in the canon. As Kuroto was busy in his thoughts, suddenly Guy, who was silent up until now, asked, "Kakashi, Kuroto, Hokage-sama will not be in trouble, right?" Listening to Guy's question, Kakashi sighed silently and shook his head. Because he has spent quite a lot of time with Asuma in the past few weeks, he has a clear understanding of the political situation of Konoha, and that is why he is also aware of the fact that the trouble this time is quite big, and it is slightly difficult for Sandaime-sama to be able to solve it that easily. The most troublesome problem that Sandaime-sama is facing is not the dissatisfaction of Konoha villagers, rather it is the pressure from the daimyo of the Land of Fire. For the reconstruction of Konoha as quickly as possible, daimyo of the Land of Fire had to take out a lot of funds from his treasury. The burden of this is also borne by the populace of the Land of Fire in the form of increased taxes. As such, daimyo is greatly dissatisfied with Sandaime Hokage for his inability to protect Konoha and the Land of Fire. And as if this wasn't already more than enough, the old Coot Shimura Danzo has used some method and persuaded the daimyo that Sarutobi Hiruzen is incapable of protecting Konoha, because of which, daimyo, who used to work tacitly with Sandaime-sama, has suddenly retracted back his political support and is asking for an explanation. Then there were also more than 2,000 casualties, as well as a large number of injured people, and this has made the populace of Konoha very dissatisfied. Even if Sandaime Hokage did his best to protect the village from the Akatsuki organization, he still can't shirk the responsibility of his failure as a Hokage, because it was his plan that made Akatsuki attack Konoha village, which led to the destruction of Konoha and resulted in over 2,000 casualties. The people who have lost their family members obviously need some way to vent out their emotions, and expressing dissatisfaction towards Sandaime Hokage is the result under the careful guidance of some black hands behind the scene. And finally, the fact that Uchiha Sasuke, Hyuga Hinata, Hyuga Neji, and also the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi were kidnapped by Orochimaru and Kakuzu on that night further caused Sandaime to lose some points from the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan. Although these two major shinobi clans are not explicitly supporting Danzo, they are not siding with Sandaime, which has clearly explained their position and stand in this internal political conflict between the Hokage faction. With all these factors combined, the situation that the Sandaime Hokage is facing is quite unfavorable. It is hard to say whether he will be able to stay in Konoha's Hokage. Shisui sighed and said with a worried expression, "I hope that Hokage-sama can tide over this difficulty. Danzo once attacked him with the plan of stealing his Mangekyo Sharingan, so Shisui has a very poor evaluation of Danzo and doesn't trust that old guy at all. As such, he doesn't want Danzo to become Konoha's Hokage." On the issue of which side is supporting, Shisui has also clearly expressed his attitude to the Uchiha Patriarch. Considering that both Sandaime Hokage and Danzo are part of the Hokage faction, and because both Jiraiya and Tsunade Haim are part of the Sandaime Hokage's power line. So, out of consideration of political balance, the Uchiha Patriarch chose to remain neutral on behalf of the Uchiha clan and expressed his intention of not participating in the internal conflict of the Hokage faction. Of course, the neutral attitude of the Uchiha Patriarch also had a lot of impact on the overall situation because the current Uchiha clan is completely different from the Uchiha clan in the canon. Because Uchiha Shisui, the awakener of Mangekyo Sharingan, rinnegan, is not only alive-kicking, he is also regarded as the strongest combat power on the side of the 5 great shinobi villages. As such, Uchiha clan has a strong backing behind them, coupled with the occasional activity of the Uchihas of Konoha, Akatsuki, and Amatsukami. The name of the Uchiha clan is currently the loudest in the shinobi world, aside from Amatsukami and Akatsuki, so the reputation of the Uchiha clan is very high in Konoha. Additionally, because of the external pressure brought by powerful enemies, the Hokage faction has also done a lot of things to solicit the Uchiha clan, and they no longer try to suppress the Uchiha clan. As a result, the influence and reputation of the Uchiha clan have once again skyrocketed within Konoha. Because of strong backing and high reputation, nobody wants to offend this clan filled with powerful monsters. And because Uchiha clan has expressed their attitude to remain neutral, this has also allowed many other clans to use Uchiha clan as their shield and remain neutral in the internal political conflict of the Hokage faction. As such, there is no possibility for Sandaime to gain any political support from the major shinobi clans, which has further allowed Danzo to pressurize him. While everyone at the Anbu base was discussing a lot of things, the Anbu commander came to the base and conveyed the result of the meeting that took place not long ago. In the meeting, a resolution was passed according to which, 6 days from now, a vote of confidence will be held in Konoha to decide whether Sandaime-sama would remain as Konoha's Hokage, or he will resign from his position and elect a new Hokage to lead the village. One more thing to note is that in the vote of confidence that is to be held 6 days from now, only shinobi at the rank of Special Jonin and above are allowed to participate, which is not surprising for many reasons. Hearing the result of the meeting, Kakashi muttered with a sigh, "Ha, I didn't expect the situation to get to this point." Although Kakashi was worried before, he still had trust in Sandaime Hokage, and believed that Hokage-sama will be able to somehow tide over this difficult situation. But unexpectedly, the situation has already gotten to this point. It seems that another storm is coming. After all, once the vote of confidence is held, then regardless of its result, it will have another serious impact on Sandaime-sama's prestige and trust. Similar to Kakashi, Guy, Shisui, as well as other Anbu also had worried expressions on their faces, and each of them was uneasy about what sort of impact it will have on the overall situation of Konoha and the shinobi world. Of course, Kuroto was different from everyone, and he had a completely neutral expression. Regardless of the result of the vote of confidence, he has no intention of interfering in this matter, even if Shimura Danzo becomes Konoha's Hokage. In fact, Kuroto is even willing to temporarily support Danzo if necessary, because this is important for his plans. In order to continue the Kekkei Genkai absorption ritual on Danzo, one of the necessary conditions is that Danzo becomes Konoha's Hokage. This is not only Danzo's intention and desire, but also a necessary requirement for the plan to continue. The reason is that the manpower and material resources required to carry out the ritual are no longer something his root that has been abolished can acquire. Kuroto realizes this, and as such, he understands that if Danzo does not sit in the position of Konoha's Hokage as soon as possible, then it's possible that the plan will be delayed by several months, or possibly even a few years. Delay of the plan is not something Kuroto wants to see, as the threat of Nagato is always looming over his head. So he has no choice but to let Danzo become Konoha's Hokage. With this intention, Kuroto left the Anbu base after everyone was asked to disperse and made his way towards his home. While on his way, Kuroto had a thoughtful expression. Danzo insisted on postponing the vote of confidence and asked it to be held 6 days later. It is very likely that he wanted to enact the rescue operation of Hinata and Naruto. This is very easy to understand because, given the current situation, the probability of Danzo becoming Konoha's Hokage is not very high. Even if he managed to garner daimyo's support, the major shinobi clans will not support him, as he has repeatedly offended them. Moreover, even if Konoha's populace is dissatisfied with Sandaime, everyone still understands the threat of the Akatsuki organization, which is the enemy of Konoha and the other 4 great shinobi villages. Therefore, everyone would want a powerful Hokage who can protect Konoha. So before the emergence of a powerful candidate who can lead the village after Sandaime-sama steps down, the position of Sandaime-sama can be said to be barely stable. But that would no longer be the case if Danzo enacted the scene of the rescue of Hinata and Naruto from the hands of Orochimaru. In the villagers' eyes, if Danzo can rescue hostages from the hands of someone like Orochimaru, then he can barely act as a replacement for Sandaime Hokage. Danzo should also understand this. As such, he will definitely enact the rescue of Hinata and Naruto before the vote of confidence. With the matter of the vote of confidence that is to be held in 6 days decided, Kuroto left the Anbu base, and upon returning his home, he again found a piece of parchment in the very same bamboo grass in the lawn of his house. Again, and this soon, muttered Kuroto with a frowned expression, and thought, the frequency at which they are contacting me is increasing with each contact. Akatsuki organization is becoming more and more impatient. Although not very pleased, Kuroto still took out the parchment from the bamboo grass, and after noting that, like all time, there was again a coordinate position marked in it, Kuroto pondered over it a little and finally decided to go to that place, remaining in touch with Akatsuki organization can not only temporarily ensure Neiji's safety, but also allow Kuroto to keep track of the Akatsuki organization's movements and intentions to some extent. This is very important, since Kuroto cannot openly contact Shinichi, because the other guy is probably being closely monitored and is unable to transmit the inside information about the Akatsuki organization. Similar to the last few contacts, the location that he was asked to come to was not too far from the Konoha village. As such, it didn't take him too long to reach there. As Kuroto arrived at the location that was marked on the map, suddenly, there was some noise in the grass not far away from him. With his Byakugan activated, Kuroto glanced in that particular direction, and upon noticing that a presence was coming closer to him, he couldn't help but think to himself, is Akatsuki finally arranging someone to meet me? Up until now, whenever Kuroto came to deliver any intelligence upon receiving instructions from Akatsuki, no one was coming to meet him at the location, and he was only leaving behind scrolls. But now that someone is finally meeting him, it means that Obito and Akatsuki have developed some trust in Kuroto's credibility, and this is undoubtedly a good start. Kuroto didn't have to wait too long, as not long after he noted a presence, which is actually a white figure came out of the bushes and appeared before him. The person who came out had a completely white body with greenish hair, along with a pair of yellow eyes. Obviously, the white being standing before Kuroto isn't a normal clone of White Zetsu. Rather, it is one of the 100,000 Zetsu that Kaguya left behind after she was sealed. One strange thing to note about these 100,000 Zetsus is that they all have the same personality, despite the fact that each of them used to be a different human being before turning into a Zetsu being. This just doesn't make sense to him, no matter how Kuroto thinks about it. Logically speaking, if they were different human beings before turning into Zetsu beings, then they must at least have some differences even after turning into Zetsu beings. But no, each and every one of them is exactly the same, with the exact same personality, which is bizarre. But well, putting this issue aside, after Kuroto looked up and down at the Zetsu-like being standing in front of him, he then asked, "Who are you?" The Zetsu-like being looked at Hyuga Kuroto for a moment, then immediately said, "Hyuga Kuroto, I am the one responsible for collecting intelligence from you. You can call me Josetsu-sama." Josetsu-sama? Is he being serious? Kuroto looked strangely at the Zetsu being, but seeing that the other party was quite serious, he had to believe it and asked, "So, when will you give me what I want?" Josetsu shrugged. "Our leader is not very satisfied with the information you have given us up until now. If you want to get what you want, you must give us something noteworthy that is useful to us. Perhaps more valuable information, like when is the next the members of Amatsukami will appear in Konoha, how many of them will come, etc., etc. Are you kidding me?" asked Kuroto with a gloomy expression. No, you are misunderstanding something." Josetsu shook his head and explained, "This is how Akatsuki works, and we have always been fair. If you want some kind of reward, then you have to exchange it for something that is of equal worth. The information you have given us up until now is not of equal value compared to what you want in return from us," Kuroto said in a chilling tone. "You think this is all a game? Did I not say that except for Hokage-sama no one else is aware of such information?" Josetsu nodded. Exactly. As you have said, Hokage is the one who has such information. If this is the case, then you should find a way to steal such information from the Hokage to get what you want. Of course, you can also... Swish. Before Josetsu could finish his words, he felt a sharp feeling invade his right arm. At the same time, he caught the sight of a silver light for a moment, and the next thing he knew, his entire right hand was cut off from the shoulder region and had fallen to the ground. You! What are you doing? Taken aback by the sudden change, Josetsu backed away immediately and looked at Kuroto, who has unknowingly unsheathed his Kusanagi no Tsurugi and was standing only an inch away in front of him with a surprised expression. In the aghast expression of Josetsu, Kuroto slowly put back his Kusanagi no Tsurugi into its sheath, then said to Josetsu with a cold expression, "I will tell you one thing, and I want you to pass it to your fake Uchiha Madara. I have limited patience. If he wants to use me to get any more information on Amatsukami, then firstly, I want him to return my disciple back. If a Akatsuki organization cannot even show their sincerity, then don't expect me to take any more risk." Josetsu didn't expect Hyuga Kuroto to attack him so suddenly and even be bold enough to present such a condition in front of him, so although flabbergasted, he still tried to threaten Kuroto. "Don't forget, all the information you have given us up until now is still in our hands. Think of the consequences. What would happen if all these scrolls that are proof of your treachery are made public knowledge? You will be branded as traitor." And before Josetsu could complete his sentence, the blade of Kuroto's Kusanagi no Tsurugi was already resting on his neck. With just an inch away from killing him, Kuroto coldly said, "Then go ahead and do your worst. My conditions will not change. If Akatsuki wants me to take to risks and steal the information that they need, then I want Akatsuki to fulfill my first demand too. I know that cracking cage bird Jinjutsu can take a lot of time, so I am willing to wait for it, but the safety of my disciple must be confirmed immediately. Return my disciple, and I will be willing to cooperate, otherwise I won't give a damn. If you people are not even willing to let go of my disciple who had nothing to do with you, then why should I take risks for you?" Seeing the blade of Kuroto's sword resting on his neck, and hearing Kuroto's arguments, Josetsu was completely silent. Rather, he was kind of afraid to speak anything, as he was worried that he will be killed if he spoke anything wrong. Seeing that White Zetsu was not speaking anything, Kuroto asked, "Did I make, myself clear?" Seeing the blade of Kuroto's sword resting on his neck, and hearing Kuroto's arguments, Josetsu was completely silent. Rather, he was kind of afraid to speak anything as he was worried that he will be killed if he spoke anything wrong. Seeing that White Zetsu was not speaking anything, Kuroto asked, "Did I make myself clear?" Josetsu hurriedly nodded. The reason why Josetsu chose not to threaten Kuroto more than necessary is for 3 reasons. Firstly, he did not have enough strength to do so. Second, even if they made the fact that he has turned into a traitor, it would be of no benefit to the Akatsuki organization. And finally, even if they kill Hyuga Kuroto and replace him with some other spy, they would face the same problem again. With his point made clear, Kuroto took back his sword and again put it back into the sheath. Now that the sword was away, Josetsu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Now that the sword was away," Josetsu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I will report your condition back to our leader, and maybe he will be willing to let your disciple go. But to get the help in regards to the caged bird Jinjutsu, you must provide us effective and useful information. There will be no room for bargaining in this matter." After saying so, Josetsu did not wait for Kuroto's answer. He hurriedly dived into the ground and immediately left this place. He didn't know why, but when facing Hyuga Kuroto at this moment, he was feeling extremely scared. It was not just any kind of fear, but instinctual fear.